Chanda Kochhar, the former head of ICICI Bank, has been sacked from the bank after being indicted and found guilty after a series of allegations against her were investigated by an inquiry panel headed by the retired Supreme Court Judge B.N. Sri Krishna. This had to do with allegations of a conflict of interest with regard to the disbursal of a series of loans. Now, I'm going to read out the operative part of the punishment, as it were, for Chanda Kochhar, the fact that she's been sacked. And this is what the report says. Following the receipt of the inquiry report and due consideration, the Board of Directors decided to treat the separation of Ms. Chanda Kochhar from the bank as a termination for cause. She's been terminated from the bank under the bank's internal policies with all attendant consequences, including revocation of all her existing and future entitlements, such as any unpaid amounts, unpaid bonuses or increments, unvested and vested and unexercised stock options and medical benefits, and require the clawback of all bonuses paid from April 2009 until March 2018, and to take such further actions as may be warranted in the manner. So Chanda Kochhar, who had been kept away from the functioning of her responsibilities as the head of ICICI Bank, has now been sacked. Not only that, she's been punished by a series of steps which have been announced. My colleague Saurabh Gupta joins us now for more on this. Saurabh, not only has Chanda Kochhar, one of the most prominent bankers in India, been sacked, there is now an effort to actually claw back from her past funds that she had received, this being in a shape the punishment for her dereliction of duty, is what the inquiry report has to say.
Well, Vishnu, one of the things that definitely comes to light is the board, ICICI board, initially completely stood by Chanda Kochhar and said all disclosures have been made. Now, of course, now the board has found this after an inquiry, but that was, of course, we must note, while the inquiry was on, while the inquiry had been announced. Now, this is pretty damning as far as the report is concerned, because this probe had been ordered by the ICICI board and handed over to Justice Krishna to look into the allegations that were made. The allegations were of quid pro quo and also improprieties in the manner in which the loans were given to Videocon, after which the Videocon had invested in a company that was run by Chanda Kochhar's husband. But at this moment, the report clearly says Chanda Kochhar violated ICICI's code of conduct and lack of diligence in annual disclosures. Clearly, it's an indictment of the CEO, then CEO, who had then stepped down, of course, and this happened, of course, last year. But now it seems that the ICICI board is acting. Now, a few days ago, you would remember there was an FIR against Chanda Kochhar, Venugopal Dhoot, and her husband. And it clearly seems that the troubles for Chanda Kochhar are just beginning, because now it seems that the report, the probe that was ordered, has also found her violating the code of conduct and also not, making these annual disclosures that ideally should have been part of her disclosures, because this was the company that was investing in her husband's firm, and the loans from ICICI were going to that company, which later became an NPA.
I'm just going to read out a few of the other points and then get you back on the line. The inquiry report says that Ms. Chanda Kochhar was in violation of the ICICI Bank Code of Conduct, its framework for dealing with conflict of interest and fiduciary duties, and in terms of applicable Indian laws, rules and regulations. The inquiry report concluded that a lack of diligence with respect to annual disclosures is required by the bank in terms of internal policies, the ICICI Bank's Code of Conduct and applicable Indian laws, rules and regulations on her interests towards avoidance of conflict of interest, when considered that the bank's processes were dependent solely on the directors discharging their fiduciary duty to recuse themselves and avoid conflict, implies that the bank's processes were rendered ineffective by her approach to such disclosures and avoidance of conflict. Following the receipt of the inquiry report and after due consideration, Chanda Kochhar from the bank has been terminated for cause under the bank's internal policy schemes and the code of conduct, with all attendant consequences. So she's been sacked. As my colleague Saurabh was mentioning, she'd been kept away from the functioning while the inquiry was taking place Other members of the board of ICICI Bank, one of the largest in the country, had stood up for Chanda Kochhar. But now, after this inquiry report, which was conducted by the Honourable Mr. Justice Retired B.N. Sri Krishna, she's been sacked and she's being punished because an effort is also being made to get back funds to the bank. So she's been terminated with all attendant consequences, including revocation of all her existing and future entitlements, such as any unpaid amounts, unpaid bonuses or increments, unvested, invested and unexercised stock options and medical benefits. And there is a requirement that there is a clawback of all bonuses paid from April 2009 until March 2018. So she needs to pay back whatever bonuses she also received, and that there could be further actions as may be warranted in the matter. This is a come down for among India's most prominent bankers, somebody who was seen to be a high achiever until she was found guilty of corruption and has been thrown out of ICICI Bank, one of the country's largest banks, one of Asia's largest banks, and has now been punished with severe ramifications. That's what